Hi, I'm David Partika and I created CSSBurner. One of the functions that I added to CSSBurner to make analysis of style sheets more productive and more meaningful is the statistical analysis function, which is found or accessed by clicking the bar graph on the top nav menu. Now, I have a style sheet already pre-selected, so I'm going to paste it into the text box that we see here in blue. And the longer this takes to paste, the longer this style or the larger the style sheet is. In this case, we see it's about 583 kilobytes. So what we would do at this point is we would click on the icon and we would choose from one of the frequency distribution categories, which at this point in time, there are 8 different choices. So let's just choose one. Let's choose the CSS properties selection, which refers to, for example, the display property or visibility or font size. So let's pick this, and we could select a unit type, which at this point is, we have 2 choices, number of occurrences and percentage. Number of occurrences is just a count of the number of times that you'll see the, in this case, properties, and percentage is going to be given the total number of occurrences, the percentage for each property of the whole will be the percentage that we see in the bar graph. So we could also choose, if our input source is a file, we could click this checkbox, but we're not going to do that today since we already have a selection pasted. Now we hit the Analyze button. We wait a few seconds, and what should render in about 3 or 4 seconds is going to be a bar graph with 8 bars. Now, keep in mind that this number could be less if there are not 8 properties or whatever you select as your category. If there are not 8 to be had, you'll see less than 8. So looking at the distribution, we see that there are now 8 different properties, all with a frequency or a count of over 200. Now we can get the count by mousing over the bar itself, and we see what pops up is the number of occurrences. So what's clear here is that the most occurrences is for the display property. So the property is down here on the x-axis. Second place is the width property at 507 occurrences. So if you author this style sheet, you would perhaps be able to glean some meaningful information out of this. Now, it's not always so clear-cut. In this case, it's probably not going to be very useful as my guess, but in some cases, it's exceedingly useful. So we'll try to find an example of that before we finish this video. Now, to analyze again, we have to paste the data or input the data again back into the text area. Let's choose the same distribution, which is CSS properties, but let's use percentage. And we'll see in this case a percentage distribution, in which case the property percentages, the individual property percentages, should add up to a number approaching 100%, but not necessarily 100% because you only see the top 8 properties. So again, display is most common, and this is only 6.9% of the total properties is display, with 5.8%. If you summed up all these percentages, it would be well less than 100, which tells me that the authors of this style sheet use many different properties and are not just relying on a small number of properties to carry their style sheet and to render their their rules. So let's now reset, and I'm going to show you one more example. Let's try the pseudo elements distribution, and we'll use number of occurrences. Click. Oh no, you can't click that because nothing has been pasted yet. This is one of the validation checks. So let's paste the data back into the text area. Again, this is a big style sheet, so it will take a few seconds. Choose pseudo elements, number of occurrences, analyze. And after a few seconds, we will see 8 or fewer. Yep, 8 pseudo elements. As usual, dominated by the after and before pseudo elements. I find that authors seem to be most comfortable with these pseudo elements, or their style sheets seem to be most tailored for these pseudo elements. It's almost always the case that the after and before you will see in a large majority compared to the other pseudo elements. Here you see that placeholder is also present with a fairly high frequency. Input placeholder, all these properties, these pseudo elements are prefixed here, whereas after and before are not. And so this could tell you, it depends on what the author's goals were for this style sheet. One thing that could have been the case is that, after and before were most suitable to what this application requires. For example, if you have a long list, and maybe it's not a list of of list elements. Maybe for example, CSSBurner renders its parsed style sheets. When you use the scan option, it renders them as a series of stacked divs. And so what I do is I use the before pseudo element and the counter function to number the divs. So each rule, each declaration block has, which is contained within the div, each declaration block is numbered, using the before pseudo element. So perhaps the author had some kind of numbered list, or just had some content that needed these pseudo elements. It's hard to say, but one thing is for sure, that if you were the author or one of the authors of this style sheet, this kind of information would help you, get some analysis of your style sheet that would be difficult to get in other ways, and you would know the history of how this style sheet was written, so it would make sense to you if you did not know how to use other pseudo elements, for example, besides after and before. It would make sense that those would then be by far the majority pseudo elements observed. So anyway, this is how you use this tool. In the future, I'm going to be focusing on more granular aspects of this tool and how you can glean some meaningful data. So if you liked what you saw, please subscribe to my free newsletter by clicking on the subscribe button with your email address, or subscribe to the Optimize CSS channel and hit the thumbs up button. And I hope that I'll be hearing from you soon with any comments, and I will be making more help videos in the near future. Thanks for watching.